Hello, my name is Jacob, and welcome to the sleepy cosmos in the stillness of the night. When the world is quiet and your thoughts drift untethered, something curious happens in your mind. This series guides you through the science of the nocturnal brain, how biology, chemistry, and consciousness all shift under moonlight. With each chapter, you'll float gently through rhythms of sleep, memory, emotion, and introspection. This is not just about what the brain does at night, but what it feels like to be a mind in the dark. The day has weight. Even if it passes gently, it presses against you in unseen ways, in schedules, in sounds, in the steady rhythm of expectation. But now, the sky begins to soften. The sun folds itself behind the horizon, and something in you starts to shift. It's not just the light that dims. Your entire physiology leans toward quiet. There's a switch being thrown. But it isn't sudden. It's slow, like the lowering of a dimmer. Your heart doesn't race as much. Your breath, maybe unnoticed, begins to lengthen. The world is pulling back, and so are you. This, in part, is the work of cortisol, the hormone that wakes you, motivates you, drives you through morning meetings and afternoon tasks. As evening approaches, cortisol gracefully retreats, allowing space for another presence to rise. Melatonin begins to bloom in your bloodstream, like ink in warm water, released by the pineal gland deep in the center of your brain. It doesn't force sleep, it invites it. You feel it as a slow exhale through your entire being. Your body temperature drops slightly, muscles loosen. Your mind becomes a little dreamier, a little less clipped and sharp. Like a candle flickering at the edge of your thoughts, even your senses change. The urgency to respond, to perform, to be on begins to melt. You may still scroll or speak or pace, but somewhere underneath, your system is leaning into stillness. Your sympathetic nervous system, the one wired for movement and response, cedes the stage to the parasympathetic system, the one of rest, digestion, and recovery. These two systems are always in quiet dialogue, but now one speaks louder than the other. You feel the effects in subtle ways. Maybe you notice your thoughts stretch a little more. They wander more freely. You begin to remember small things from the day, a tone of voice, a bird that crossed your path, something left unsaid. It's not that you try to think of these things. They rise like mist. This is the slow descent from doing to being. And this descent is not just psychological, it's biological. Your circadian rhythm, a near 24-hour internal clock, keeps time not with gears or numbers, but with hormones, light, and temperature. It is the invisible conductor that orchestrates your waking and sleeping states. As dusk comes, the rhythm signals that it's time to change key. You are, in many ways, an animal responding to light. The back of your eyes, the retina, contains cells that detect brightness, not for sight, but for rhythm. They send messages to the brain's master clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which coordinates your sleep-wake cycle. And this clock listens carefully to the color of the sky. When blue light fades, the clock whispers, "Slow down." This shift doesn't just prepare you for sleep. It opens a new kind of awareness, one that is more interior, more tuned to emotion and thought than action. You may notice that worries feel different at night. Not always heavier, but rounder, more reflective. That memories feel more vivid, not because they are clearer, but because your filters are thinner. filters the parts of your mind that screen and categorize and dismiss, begin to relax. You become more permeable. A passing thought that would be ignored during the busy daylight might now land softly and stay a while. This is part of why the night feels so alive. Even when the world is quiet, your body responds to this shift with chemistry, yes, but also with rhythm. Heart rate variability increases at night, a sign of balance in your autonomic nervous system. Your digestion slows, your muscles release their tension, and your immune system becomes more active, as if night were the chosen time for healing. Even your blood pressure follows the sun. It dips slightly at night, giving your heart a rest. Like a caretaker stepping in while the house sleeps, your internal systems perform their quiet rituals of repair. All of this is preparing you not just for sleep, but for something deeper, a transition from the outer world to the inner one. You may feel a strange in-betweenness, not fully awake, not quite asleep. This is the quiet switch in motion, and it's not a binary. It's a gradient, a twilight of consciousness, sometimes. In this threshold, you may find yourself staring out a window or into nothing at all, not because you're trying to think, but because your mind has entered a different gear. It's coasting. And in this coasting, strange and gentle insights may appear. You realize something you didn't know you knew, or you feel something you hadn't made time to feel. The slowing down is not an ending, it's a doorway. This doorway leads inward, and inward is where night lives, not just in stars or shadows, but in how your brain allows more of itself to be heard. The analytical mind steps back a little. The emotional, intuitive currents come forward. You begin to sense your thoughts rather than dissect them. You begin to feel the music of your mind, not just its mechanics. And so the quiet switch is more than a drop in cortisol or a rise in melatonin. It's a ritual, ancient, physiological, and profoundly human. The same biology that governs deer at dusk, or the hush of trees when wind settles, lives in you. You are always part of the larger night. There is no moment when the switch is flipped, no single second where you cross from day to night. But you feel it, the slow drift, the weight releasing from your shoulders, the pace of your breathing evening out. You begin to return to yourself, not the one made for meetings and movement, but the one who watches, feels, and dreams. And as you settle more deeply into the quiet, your mind becomes a little less tethered to now. You begin to drift into memory, into what-ifs, into strange, floating wonderings. You are no longer only here. You are also in thought, in feeling, in the space between questions. Because with the quiet comes not just stillness, but openness. And with openness comes something new, a softness, a sensitivity, a kind of glow from within. And in this glow, a signal rises, gentle, invisible, and powerful, telling your body that night has truly arrived. That signal begins as a whisper deep inside your brain, and it is called melatonin. The light fades, not all at once, but like water draining from a bowl. In that soft withdrawal of day, something small and ancient stirs inside your brain. Deep in the center, tucked between the folds of your hemispheres, lies a pinnacle-shaped structure, the pineal gland. It is no larger than a grain of rice, yet it holds the night in its chemistry. As darkness deepens, the pineal gland awakens, not with sound or sensation, but with a secretion. It releases melatonin, a molecule often mistaken as simply the signal to sleep. But melatonin is more than a sedative. It is an invitation. A lullaby whispered through your bloodstream begins in response to absence, the absence of light. Special cells in your eyes, untouched by conscious seeing, detect the dimming. They send a signal not to the visual parts of the brain, but to the body's inner timekeeper, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. From there, a message flows to the pineal gland. Now it's time. Release the night. Melatonin drifts into your bloodstream with quiet certainty. You don't feel it arrive like caffeine or sugar. Instead, you notice what begins to fade: the mental noise, the edge of urgency, the need to solve. The molecules do not make you sleep. They prepare the path, like street lamps guiding your way through the forest of thought. Your body listens. Your eyelids grow heavier, your limbs more reluctant to move. But more than this, your thinking changes. It becomes slower, more meandering, like a stream at dusk. The filter that once kept emotion in check grows thinner. And so thoughts don't just arrive, they land, they echo, they stay longer than they might have at noon. This is melatonin's true magic. It does not push you down into unconsciousness. It opens you to it. In the daylight, your mind is a fortress of clarity, decision, and action. But at night, it becomes a chamber of echoes, of memory, of wonder. And melatonin is the gentle key that unlocks that door. You may find yourself more reflective at this hour. A moment from the past reappears, softer around the edges. A worry feels deeper, but not necessarily heavier. The emotional part of your brain, the limbic system, becomes more active as melatonin rises. It is not overwhelmed, it is alert, but inwardly so, like a lighthouse scanning an inner sea, perhaps. This is why creativity so often arrives in the twilight hours. As the light outside dims, the light within flickers more freely. Logic loosens its grip. The part of your brain responsible for executive function, the prefrontal cortex, becomes quieter. And in that hush, other voices speak: the intuitive, the symbolic, the associative. One thought links strangely to another. An idea blooms where before there was only noise. Melatonin does not create dreams, but it makes space for them. It sets the stage for REM sleep, the vivid phase of slumber where dreams take shape. But even before that, even as you lie awake, it adjusts your perception. Colors may seem cooler, time less precise. You become untethered in the most peaceful way. And yet, melatonin does not sedate like a drug. It follows rhythm, not command. If light re-enters the scene from a phone, a screen, a lamp, the spell breaks. This is why night has become more fragile in the modern world. Why sleep sometimes slips through fingers that scroll. Melatonin needs the dark, the true dark, to rise like mist from the pineal's quiet pool. You are not the only creature who dances to this hormone's rhythm. Nearly all animals with eyes respond to melatonin's lull. Birds, reptiles, fish, all governed by this molecular moonlight. It binds us, through biology, to the Earth's rotation. You are not simply falling asleep, you are participating in a planetary exhale. And just as the tides respond to the moon, your emotions respond to melatonin's pull. Feelings deepen. The protective distance you hold from the world softens. You might feel more sentimental, more open to longing. A phrase, overheard earlier, may return now with surprising weight. Melatonin allows you to feel what you were too busy to register. This openness is not weakness. It is a kind of clarity that daylight doesn't offer. A way of seeing without squinting. More emotional, more symbolic, more alive to metaphor. You are not less yourself at night. You are simply more layered. Melatonin peels back the outer mask, the one built for tasks and transactions, and beneath it is a softer version of you, quieter, slower, truthful. You may find the courage to face something gently, a regret, a hope, a question without an answer, not to fix it, but to hold it. And holding is a kind of healing that only the night can offer. Still, melatonin is not permanent. It does not stay forever, like dew. It begins to fade before you even wake. Around 3 a.m., for many people, its levels begin to decline. Slowly, your system prepares to return to the rhythms of day, but that's still hours away. For now, you remain suspended in its influence. Like a candle held in cupped hands, the flame small but steady. Your mind, sheltered from the winds of the world, glows softly in its own space. You do not need to do anything, only be here in this strange and gentle light, and in this light you begin to wander. Not through the world, but through your own thoughts. Ideas, questions you once paused but never answered. And in this wandering, something beautiful occurs. Your brain begins to hum even as the body slows, because as melatonin opens one door, it reveals another just behind it, a deeper, older path inside the brain, where thoughts wander freely, even when you're not trying to think at all. There is a secret world in your mind. It's not the one that checks the time or solves equations or navigates a conversation. It's the one that emerges when you're doing nothing at all. When you lie in bed, no task in sight, your gaze unfocused, your breath slow. In those in-between spaces, your brain lights up in a different way. This is the realm of the default mode network, a gentle web of regions in your brain that becomes more active when the world around you quiets down. It lives mostly in the midline of your brain, in the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate, the angular gyrus, and parts of your hippocampus, a soft constellation of self-reflection, memory, and imagination. And strangely, this network is most active, not when you are focused, but when you are free-floating. You might think that doing nothing is a kind of mental stillness, but in truth, your brain is never truly still. It simply changes the kind of work it's doing. When you are not attending to the outside world, you begin to attend to the inner. You start to drift into a moment from earlier today, into a memory from years ago, into an imagined conversation, or a version of the future shaped like a dream. The default mode network is the source of this wandering. It pulls together scraps of experience and emotion, layering them into narrative. It doesn't move in straight lines. It flows like ink in water, expanding in all directions. You remember, you reflect, you reimagine, you daydream, and at night, when melatonin rises and the pressures of the world begin to ease, this network grows more pronounced, not because you are asleep, but because you are no longer being asked to perform. With no tasks to pin your attention to, your awareness is released. You begin to drift without even noticing. Maybe you're lying in bed, eyes closed, and your mind walks into a scene from childhood. You remember the scent of a room, the tilt of a voice, or perhaps you start to plan tomorrow without meaning to, but softly, without urgency. Or you hear a voice in your head, your own speaking as if to an invisible listener. This kind of internal narration is part of the default mode's domain. It is the part of you that holds a sense of you, not as a name or a fact, but as a feeling. It asks, "Who am I?" with tone, with a sensation that passes and fades. Scientists once thought the brain at rest was idle, but it turns out rest is incredibly rich. It is in this mental space that people solve problems they couldn't when focused, that they gain sudden clarity, that their feelings rise to the surface with meaning. And it is not random, though it can feel like drifting. The default mode network is organized. It weaves past, present, and possible future into a personal thread of meaning. It is your inner narrator, your quiet editor, your dreamer. When you let your mind wander, especially at night, you are entering the workshop of the self, and the tools it uses are memory, imagination, emotion, and reflection. This is not the work of calculation. It is the work of sense-making. You are processing what has happened and what hasn't yet. You may also notice something else. The network can turn inward too much. This is where looping thoughts, rumination, or nighttime anxiety sometimes arise, because the same system that reflects can also replay. The same one that dreams can also worry. But this, too, is natural. It is not broken. It is a brain trying to understand itself through repetition, through rehearsal, through turning a thought over in soft hands again and again until its edges wear smooth. You do not need to force stillness. The wandering is part of the process. And over time, as sleep nears, your default mode quiets, gently handing the baton to deeper processes. But even then, its fingerprints remain in dreams, in symbols, in the quiet voice that echoes just before you cross into sleep. You can think of it like this: your brain is a city. During the day, the highways are loud signals speeding along directed routes. But at night, the side streets come alive. Unmarked paths, wandering souls, soft lights behind closed windows. The default mode network is the part of you that walks those nighttime streets, hands in your pockets, remembering and wondering without needing to arrive. It is not your taskmaster. It is your storyteller. And in the silence of the night, it finds the space to speak. This is why you sometimes feel more yourself when the world is asleep. Why thoughts that felt distant come closer. Why unresolved feelings rise like waves in the dark. Your mind is not misbehaving. It is unearthing. It is processing you back into coherence. And slowly, gently, as you lie there, your breath soft, your limbs still, this network begins to quiet again. The loops loosen, the thoughts slow. A new phase of mind is coming, because there is a moment when thought gives way to image, when reflection gives way to dreams. And just as the default mode network begins to rest, another world, wordless and surreal, begins to stir. Night has always held a kind of emotional gravity, not heavy exactly, but deeper, a thickening of experience. You lie in bed, still, and something opens. A feeling that hovered on the edges of your day now steps forward, bolder. You remember something small, and it feels not small at all. This is not your imagination. Your brain's chemistry is changing with the falling dark. One of the most important players in this shift is your amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep within your brain, tucked into the folds of your limbic system. The amygdala is often called the emotional core. It helps you detect meaning. In feeling, it reacts, alerts, amplifies, and at night, it becomes more active. Why? Part of the answer lies in what isn't happening. The prefrontal cortex, which governs logic and impulse control, stays busy. But at night, in rest and quiet, that balance shifts. The executive brain softens, while the emotional brain stirs. Imaging studies show that the amygdala lights up more in response to emotional stimuli. When you're sleep-deprived or at rest in dim environments, its sensitivity increases. You don't just think more at night. You feel more. There's no rush. Nothing interrupts. And with that slowness, emotional signals that were previously drowned out by noise start to echo. A thought that passed in a blink during lunch now arrives like a wave. A text message from earlier takes on new weight. A memory returns. But this time, it has a texture, a color, a sound. The stillness of night acts like an amplifier. Feelings expand because they have room to, like music in an empty room, they reverberate, filling corners you didn't know were waiting. This is why sadness can feel sharper after sunset. Not because things are worse, but because you're no longer moving past them. Grief, anxiety, nostalgia, they all emerge when stillness invites them in. The distractions are gone, and what remains is what has always been there, patiently waiting. But this magnification isn't limited to sadness. Joy, too, can feel warmer, more intimate. You might think of someone you love and feel suddenly overwhelmed by tenderness. You might remember a moment of laughter and it rings louder than before. Even awe, that quiet recognition of something larger than yourself, often blooms under stars, not sunlight. Your emotional system, once buffered by the demands of the day, is now unfiltered, and the amygdala, released from its leash of logic, becomes more expressive. This doesn't mean you are irrational. It means you are more raw, more honest, more connected to the undercurrents of your own mind. The night invites introspection, and introspection always invites emotion. Think of your emotions as colors in water. In the bright churn of day, the water moves too quickly to notice. But at night, the currents slow, the colors swirl and settle. You can see the shapes they make. This deepening also comes from the default mode network, which we visited earlier, the system that activates when your mind is at rest. As it reflects, remembers, and imagines, it hands its creations to the amygdala, which colors them. So a memory becomes not just a thought, but a felt experience. You relive it, even if just for a moment. And some emotions only emerge when there's space. Longing is one of them. Longing lives in the future and the past. It requires a gap, a space between what was and what is. At night, you are more aware of that space. You might feel a yearning for something you can't quite name, a sense that something is missing, or perhaps simply absent. This is the night speaking through you, not asking for solutions, just asking you to listen. It's also the reason late-night conversations often feel more vulnerable when someone speaks to you in the dark. Their words feel heavier, more sacred. Walls drop. Laughter turns softer. Even silence between words takes on meaning. Your body participates in this shift too. Cortisol, the stress hormone, dips. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, can rise after emotional reflection. Your nervous system slides into a more parasympathetic state, the rest and digest mode. You're not just thinking differently, you're physically more receptive. This makes you more open, not only to pain, but also to healing. The emotions you feel after sunset may rise sharply, but they also settle more easily when allowed to move. Night allows for processing, for breathing through things instead of pushing past them. This is why people cry more easily at night. It is not weakness, it is permission, the body letting go, the brain loosening its grip. Tears are not a breakdown, they are a reset. Still, the nighttime mind can be tender. It can take you places you weren't planning to go. This vulnerability can feel like a risk, but it's also a kind of truth. What you feel at night is often what you've needed to feel all day. And just as some emotions swell, others begin to thin. Fear gives way to softness. Worry fades into weariness. Even longing becomes quiet when met with compassion. So you lie there, wrapped in darkness, your breath slower now. The thoughts that once echoed have become whispers. The feeling that once surged now rests like a tide. And somewhere, just behind your awareness, the brain begins to do something remarkable. It takes the rawness of emotion and prepares it for dreaming. It weaves it into symbols, into stories. It dissolves the sharpness and reshapes it into something else, something only the dreaming mind can truly understand. Because emotion, once felt fully, often becomes image. And images impossible, beautiful, strange, are waiting just beyond this waking edge. The day holds you in its grip, not just through tasks and motion, but through chemistry. Cortisol, the hormone of vigilance, courses through you from the moment light first touches your skin. It wakes you, sharpens your focus, steadies your balance. It helps you meet the world with all its needs and noise and motion. But now, the light is gone, and inside your body, something begins to shift. Cortisol retreats, like the tide drawing away from the shore. Not all at once, but gradually, gently, like the slow loosening of a clenched hand. You don't feel it as a sudden change. You feel it as an exhale that finally finishes, as a quiet dropping of weight you didn't know you were carrying, as a softening, not just in your muscles, but in your thoughts. Cortisol doesn't vanish. It isn't your enemy. It's simply not needed as much in the stillness of night. Your body senses the quiet, and the hormone that once braced you begins to dim. And as it does, a different chemistry begins to take hold. Think of cortisol as the conductor of the day. It keeps the tempo brisk. It cues the entrances. When it steps down, the orchestra doesn't stop. It simply plays a different kind of music. You may notice it in your thoughts first. They grow less linear, less goal-oriented. You forget why you walked into a room. You start thinking in loops rather than lines. This is not failure, it is transition. Your brain is entering a more diffuse mode, one where ideas drift, combine, and dissolve, where memory is less about accuracy and more about mood, where time no longer feels like a series of hours, but a gentle hum in the background. Without cortisol steering you forward, your mind becomes like water without a current. It spreads out, it reflects, it deepens. You lie in the dark and remember something small, a sentence spoken years ago. You trace it, not to solve it, but simply to feel it again. You let it drift in your mind like a leaf on still water. This is how the night holds memory, not to capture it, but to soften it. Your body follows suit. Your heart rate slows. Your muscles loosen. Even your pupils dilate slightly in the dark. Lies within. Cortisol's decline also makes room for another rhythm. The rhythm of the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, where the body begins to heal itself, where the immune system shifts into repair, where tension unwinds without needing to be pulled. And so, letting go of the day is not something you do. It's something your body already knows how to do. If you let it, it's not an off switch, but a surrender, a slow return to baseline, to stillness. But there's something curious about this space. As cortisol falls, structure thins. Thoughts become less bound by task or sequence. You may find yourself remembering things out of order, feeling moments without needing to name them. Time begins to lose its hard edges. 10 minutes can feel like an hour, or like nothing at all. This is the brain's shift into non-linear processing, a space where associations grow stranger, more creative. This is also where hypnagogia begins, the transitional state between wakefulness and sleep. You may see shapes, lights, feel a floating sensation. You're not dreaming yet. Your brain is loosening the rules. Cortisol's retreat opens this door, and in this space, new connections are made. Ideas long buried resurface. Feelings long suppressed bloom briefly, then pass. It's not chaos, it's reorganization. Like a field, once harvested, letting seeds fall wherever they will. This quiet chemistry shapes your inner world. The night does not silence you, it reveals you. You are not empty without the day's demands. You are full of things that can only surface when the noise stops. Letting go of the day isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it stirs what you've been too busy to feel, but even that is part of the process. To unwind, you must loosen. To loosen, you must first be still. As cortisol slips further away, the scaffolding of the day dissolves. You are no longer preparing, performing, producing. You are simply being, and that is enough. You may notice a yawn rise in your throat, not from boredom, but from the body's deep readiness to let go, to drop out of structure and into rhythm, to move not by will, but by wave. And as your breath grows longer, slower, your mind slides into the edge of dreaming. You are no longer trying to remember what you were doing. You are simply watching the colors shift behind your eyes, because just beyond this slow, cortisol-less sea, there is a world unlike the waking one, a world where images live without logic, where feelings become landscapes, where your mind tells stories that your conscious self cannot, and it's waiting for you just on the other side of this softness. Sleep begins quietly, like mist curling over a meadow. Your body surrenders first, the muscles slacken, your breath slows, your eyes grow heavy. But inside your skull, a subtle architecture awakens. You are not shutting down. You are shifting inward. Sleep is not stillness, it is a symphony. And your brain is the orchestra, guided by a rhythm older than memory. You move through the night in cycles, patterns of depth and lightness, of dreaming and restoration. Every 90 minutes or so, your brain completes a full movement of this nocturnal composition. It begins with NREM, or non-rapid eye movement. Sleep, The first phase is light, like dipping your toes into a cool pool. Thoughts flutter and drift, sensations blur. Your body begins to disappear from your awareness. Then comes deep sleep, stage 3, slow wave sleep. Here, your brain enters a kind of oceanic rhythm, with waves so slow and wide they seem to erase the chatter of waking life. Neurons fire in synchrony, like the hush of wind through tall grass. This is where your body does its deepest healing. Your cells repair. Your immune system strengthens. But most miraculously, your brain begins to clean itself, not metaphorically, literally. This system flushes out waste products, toxins, and the metabolic clutter that builds up during the day. Like a nighttime janitor, it moves quietly, efficiently, removing the residues of thought and effort. One of the main molecules cleared during sleep is beta amyloid, a protein that, when allowed to accumulate, becomes linked to cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease. So, this nightly cleansing isn't just for rest, it's for long-term preservation. You may think of your mind as a library. By day, books are pulled from shelves, pages left open, notes scribbled in the margins. At night, the librarian returns. Books are reshelved, pages are dusted. Some volumes are marked for storage, others gently discarded. This is synaptic housekeeping. Your brain doesn't keep everything. In fact, it can't. Each day, you absorb far more input than you can retain. Faces in crowds, songs half heard, words you read but didn't feel. So during sleep, your brain begins to decide what matters. This process is called synaptic pruning. Imagine a gardener tending to a growing vine. She cuts back what's overgrown, strengthens the branches that bear fruit. Your brain does the same, trimming weak synapses, reinforcing strong ones. Some connections are kept because they were used, others because they mattered emotionally. Memories wrapped in feeling wonder, grief, joy are more likely to remain, not because they're more accurate, but because they meant more to you while you sleep. This silent sorting continues, first in deep sleep, later in REM. REM sleep is the dreaming stage, rapid eye movement, when your brain sparks with activity, almost as vividly as when you're awake. Here, the files of memory are no longer just stored, they are reimagined. REMIXED. Emotional memories are processed, softened. Experiences are stitched into a larger narrative. Sometimes, unrelated memories are pulled together in strange, dreamlike metaphors. This is your mind rehearsing, learning, weaving the threads of past and present into something new. Scientists have found that REM sleep strengthens creative thinking, pattern recognition, and emotional resilience. It's as if your brain is not just reviewing the day, but making meaning from it. And all this while you drift. You may dream of flying, of places you've never been, of people you once knew. But beneath the symbolism and story, your brain is at work, cross-referencing, resolving, encoding. Each sleep cycle takes you deeper, then lighter again. You surface, briefly, before diving once more. Most people complete 4 to 6 cycles in a full night's rest, and with each cycle, the proportion shifts. More deep sleep earlier in the night, more REM later. So the longer you sleep, the richer the dreaming, the deeper the cleaning, the more complete the restoration. You don't need to direct this. You don't need to understand every signal. Your body knows. Your brain knows. Sleep is not a break from thinking. It is thinking in its most essential, hidden form. When you wake, you may not recall every dream, but you rise changed, more ordered, more calm, more yourself. Sleep, in this way, is an act of return to clarity, to balance, to the quiet knowing underneath all the doing. And so, as you lie still now, know that you are not wasting time. You are not lost in the dark. You are entering a chamber of care, where every cell, every synapse, every story is held, tended, loved. Soon the pruning will begin. The slow waves will roll in, and the dreaming, rich and luminous, will rise behind your eyes. But just before that, there is one more mystery to explore. Why do dreams feel so real? Why do imagined scenes stir emotions your waking life cannot explain? And what do these dreams mean for the self that waits to wake? It is 3 a.m., the hour when time softens, when the world is suspended in the hush between night and morning. And within this quiet, your mind stirs. You do not wake fully, not quite. You drift in a space between. A dream is fading. A thought arrives, uninvited. But it feels important, maybe even profound. This hour is strange, intimate, and curiously lucid. You feel a clarity that doesn't belong to the daylight world. Ideas you couldn't reach before now come floating toward you. Thoughts arrive not in straight lines, but in spirals and waves, and yet it feels real, maybe even more real than reason. So what is happening? In the deep hours of the night, your brain enters its most altered state. If you've completed several sleep cycles by now, your brain is spending longer stretches in REM. This is the dream stage, when logic dims and emotion brightens. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational control, critical thinking, planning, becomes quieter. At the same time, the limbic system, your emotional core, lights up. The amygdala hums, the hippocampus activates. You are no longer evaluating reality the way you do at noon. You're weaving it instead from memory and meaning and mood. Imagine your mind as a theater. By day, the director is in charge. Every scene rehearsed, every cue planned. By 3 a.m., the director steps out. The stagehands wander. The actors improvise. Strange pairings occur. The props shift form. But somehow, the story deepens. Creativity lives here. And insight. Studies have shown that people woken from REM sleep often solve complex problems more effectively than those fully awake, because your mind, in these moments, is freed from rules. It is more willing to make leaps, to accept contradiction, to feel before it understands. This is when intuition surfaces, the quiet voice beneath your usual thoughts, the one that whispers what you really want or really fear. At 3 a.m., the noise of the world is gone. No emails, no clocks ticking forward, no one asking anything of you. You are left with the distilled self, raw, reflective, open. This openness can bring flashes of brilliance. Artists speak of sudden melodies or images arriving in the night. Writers have described entire passages composing themselves in dreams. Scientists have woken with the answer to a puzzle that logic had failed to unlock, because insight, it seems, does not always come from working harder. Sometimes it comes from letting go, from allowing the mind to wander where it dares not go in daylight. But there is another side to this hour, one that leans into the shadow, with your prefrontal cortex asleep. Fears may seem louder. Small worries stretch into grand questions. A memory from childhood may arise without warning, tinged with emotion. At 3 a.m., everything unresolved seems to echo louder. You may ask, why now? Why does the mind replay the past, revisit regrets, imagine unlikely futures? The answer lies in the brain's chemistry. Your levels of serotonin, dopamine, and cortisol are low. Melatonin is still flowing. The emotional parts of your brain are active. This creates a kind of emotional openness, a window into feelings left unprocessed. But remember, your brain is not trying to scare you. It is trying to integrate you, to connect dots, to metabolize feeling, to bring understanding to what your waking self avoids. Even the oddness of the hour serves a purpose. Cultural traditions have long honored this time as sacred. Some call it the hour of the wolf, others the veil hour. Time to pray. Poets write. Philosophers reflect. Because when the world sleeps, the soul wakes. At 3 a.m., you are not broken. You are unfolding. Your boundaries are soft. Your memories, long filed away, begin to whisper. You might feel vulnerable, but also exquisitely alive. Even neuroscience agrees. Creativity, insight, and emotional depth all peak in altered states like this one. You are not illogical now. You are deeper than logic. So if you find yourself awake in this hour, do not resist it. Listen, observe. There may be something waiting, a thought, an idea, a truth you missed while rushing. Or perhaps it is not insight you need, but simply presence. To lie still, hear your breath, and remember, you are here. Even when the mind stirs strangely, the body continues its work. The heart beats, the lungs rise and fall, cells regenerate, hormones shift, blood flows quietly through your sleeping form. You are held by biology, by rhythm, by time, and soon the clarity will fade, the curtain will fall, you will drift again into sleep. But that moment, the 3 a.m. moment, will leave something behind, a knowing, a question, a phrase that feels truer than thought. And just as the mind begins to settle once more, you may notice something else, a lightness, a kind of unspoken freedom in having thought so strangely, a softness in having wandered inward. As the insight dissolves, another sensation arises, the dream world calling again, its language strange, its logic wild, and perhaps you wonder, why do dreams speak in riddles? Why does the dreaming mind invent such impossible places, such surreal stories? What is it trying to tell you? The world has quieted now. Even the smallest sounds feel stretched, like they echo from some deeper place. You lie in bed, wrapped not just in warmth, but in stillness, that unique kind of hush that only night can offer. And in that hush, something begins to expand, not outside, but within you, your mind gently uncoupled from the day's schedule, and the world's demands starts to wander. But it doesn't wander randomly. It drifts upward, toward the stars, toward questions too large for the daylight hours. Why am I here? What am I made of? Who am I really when no one is looking? These thoughts do not rush in. They float, they shimmer. They arrive like a soft tide, slowly lifting the edges of your awareness. This experience, this late-night stirring of deep thought, isn't just poetic, It has roots in your biology. As melatonin floods your system and cortisol retreats, your brain becomes quieter on the surface, but more sensitive underneath. The boundaries between inner and outer, self and universe, begin to blur. This is the hour of cosmic thinking. Not because the answers are clearer, but because the noise has subsided enough for the questions to rise. It may feel like loneliness, but in truth, it is connection to something wider. When you gaze into the night sky, even in your mind, you are sensing your scale against something vast. Into time, your body may lie still, but your thoughts stretch. Across centuries, this is the paradox of cosmic thinking. It begins with isolation, but ends in unity. In the absence of distraction, you become more aware of your place in the whole. The silence, far from being empty, is full of story. The universe doesn't whisper answers, it invites questions, and your brain, now more intuitive than logical, responds in metaphor. You might remember something from childhood, a telescope, a book about stars, a dream of flying. These memories return with new weight, reframed by the quiet wisdom of night. In this mood, the stars do not feel far. They feel familiar. There is science here, woven into the softness. At night, your serotonin levels shift. Dopamine, a chemical linked to curiosity and novelty, dips and then rises again as REM approaches. These neurochemical tides loosen your sense of time, soften your inner voice, and open your mind to deeper connections. Not always pleasant ones. It is your brain holding two truths at once, that you are a speck of dust in the vastness, and that your thoughts, your stories, your memories still matter. Your heart slows. With no audience to perform for, no deadlines to chase, your brain reverts to something quieter and older, wonder, the same wonder that ancient humans felt when they looked up from their fires, the same awe that drew star maps on cave walls, the same loneliness that gave birth to stories about gods, galaxies, and meaning. You feel it now. There is a comfort in this kind of loneliness, a sacred solitude. You are allowed to expand into it, to feel the boundaries of your body melt into the dark, to imagine that you are not just in the universe, but of it, a flicker of thought in an ocean of mystery. And perhaps that is what the night is for, not to find answers, but to touch questions so vast they calm you with their size. Questions that don't demand solving, only holding, like constellations. You can't name, but still recognize. The feeling is not emptiness. It is spaciousness. This space, this mental cosmos, is where new insights may be born. Slowly, gently, like stars forming in cold clouds. You are not required to act on them, only to notice, to float beside them a while. And as your mind drifts, between thought and dream, between wonder and rest, you may begin to notice something else. Your thoughts have taken on a shape, a story, not quite a dream, not quite a memory, but something in between. It is your brain preparing for the next passage, where logic fades and symbol begins, where the night deepens and the dream self stirs. And so, without forcing it, you begin to turn inward again, toward sleep, toward story, toward the quiet lands of meaning, where logic gently surrenders, and in that direction, Chapter 9 softly waits. You drift into the dream world, without noticing the moment it begins. There is no threshold to cross, no door to open, only the soft unwinding of thoughts into images, sensations, and stories that don't need to make sense to feel real. As your eyes close and your body stills, the theater of the mind opens quietly. Scenes unfold behind your eyelids, familiar faces in strange places, time bending, emotions blooming like smoke. In this space, you do not control the script. You are both the actor and the watcher, the dreamer and the dream. Your brain enters REM sleep, rapid eye movement, the stage most often linked with vivid dreaming. During this phase, your brain is surprisingly active, in some regions, even more so than when you're awake. But not all parts remain switched on. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for logic, rationality, and impulse control, steps back like a librarian turning off the lights. Its absence is why dreams rarely follow linear rules. One moment you're in your childhood kitchen, the next you're flying above cities stitched together from memory and imagination. Without logic's scaffolding, your thoughts move more like mist than bricks. And this is where meaning begins to shimmer, not in clear outlines, but in metaphors. Dreams speak in the language of symbols. A falling elevator may echo a sense of losing control. A flooded house, emotions unspoken. The dream does not explain. It evokes during the day. Your brain is an efficient archivist, categorizing memories and sorting events. But at night, it becomes more like a poet. Dreams allow memories, emotions, and stray fragments to mingle freely. This is called memory consolidation, and it's not just a neurological process. It's an emotional one, to dot your amygdala. The part of your brain tied to fear and emotion remains active in dreams. That's why dreams often carry a certain intensity. It's not uncommon to feel joy so large it aches, or terror so vivid it echoes into wakefulness. And yet, these emotional storms often come without clear narratives. They are emotional rehearsals, your brain running through simulations to prepare, to release. Studies have shown that REM sleep enhances problem solving and creativity. In dreams, your brain connects ideas that might never meet in waking life. Artists, writers, scientists, many have drawn inspiration from the strangeness of dreams. Paul McCartney dreamed the melody of yesterday. Dmitri Mendeleev saw the periodic table in his sleep. Your brain, when freed from logic, becomes an inventor. But dreams are not always luminous. Sometimes they stir discomfort. Nightmares are often tied to stress, trauma, or anxiety, and while they may feel disturbing, they serve a purpose. They can be the mind's way of processing unspoken fears, offering catharsis, or even resolution, in ways waking thought cannot. Dreaming is also shaped by your biology. The neurotransmitter acetylcholine surges during REM, enhancing memory and brain activity. Serotonin and norepinephrine, often linked to mood and attention, fall quiet. The brain's internal chemistry rearranges itself for this nightly theater, and in this altered state, you glimpse new forms of knowing, less structured, more instinctive. The content of dreams varies person to person, but certain themes appear universally: flying, falling, being chased, being late. These recurring motifs suggest shared architecture in the dream world blueprints of the human condition, built into your very wiring. Lucid dreams, when you become aware that you're dreaming, exist in the liminal space between wakefulness and sleep. They are rare, but real. In them, the prefrontal cortex flickers back online, and you briefly reclaim logic's reins. But even in lucidity, to be coherent. But in dreams, you are allowed to be unresolved. You can hold contradictions, inhabit impossibilities, explore without needing to explain. Think of the brain like an ocean. In waking life, you skim the surface, steering with intention. But in dreams, you dive deep into currents shaped by feeling, memory, and instinct. There is no map down there, only waves. But in those waves, truths ripple. Dreams do not give answers in the way your daylight mind expects. You wake up with a mood, a lingering metaphor, a shifted sense of something inside you. Your brain, even while resting, is sculpting you. It rewrites your emotional reactions, smooths rough edges from memory, and reframes your perception. In this way, dreaming is a quiet kind of growth. You sleep, but yourself continues to unfold, and when you wake, not all at once, but gently, the dream recedes like fog. Pieces remain half-held and slippery. A scent, a face, a feeling. You stretch into the morning light, subtly altered. The world returns with its sharp edges, its clocks and rules and names. But for a few minutes, the dream world lingers, reminding you that you are more than your waking thoughts. Because what happens in your dreams is not lost. It whispers through your decisions, colors your perspective, tugs softly at your sense of what's possible. And perhaps what you dreamed last night will ripple gently into tonight, where your story and your sense of self continues to shift under the stars. You don't wake all at once. Instead, you rise like mist from a still pond, slowly, softly, molecule by molecule. The first thing to stir is not your eyelids, but your chemistry. Long before your eyes flutter open, before you stretch or roll to one side, your body is already busy returning you to the world. Deep inside you, the cortisol begins to rise again. Not too much, just enough, like a sunbeam slipping beneath a closed curtain. Cortisol is often misunderstood as the stress hormone, but it's more than that. It's the signal that tells your body it's time to engage, to prepare, to open back up to the world's edges and angles. Your body listens. Your heart rate rises just a little. Your blood pressure lifts gently, like morning fog. The temperature of your body begins to adjust. You are no longer in the deep cold of sleep, but stepping toward warmth, toward waking, toward movement. But your mind takes longer. Your brain reboots, not like a computer, but like a symphony tuning itself again. First, the brainstem stirs. Then the thalamus opens its gate. The prefrontal cortex, that high tower of logic and attention, it stretches last. It is the one most changed by sleep, and the one most tender as it returns. You don't remember everything. In fact, you remember very little. Sleep is generous with its work, but stingy with its souvenirs. Most dreams vanish within moments. The ones that stay behind are fragments, a hallway without walls, a friend you haven't seen in years, a sentence with no context. They're like shells left behind by a tide that has already gone, but the emotional imprint remains. You might not recall the dream, but you carry its weather, a strange calm, an unplaced longing, a new kind of clarity. This, too, is part of the chemistry of return. As you rise, so does acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter of attention and intention. Your focus reforms, patterns emerge. Time begins to move in straighter lines again. The right of your brain start to coordinate more tightly, no longer drifting in parallel like they do in dreams, but now syncing to direct your day. Serotonin makes its reappearance too, bringing with it a steadying sense of self. If melatonin is the lullaby, serotonin is the breakfast bell. It helps regulate mood, appetite, and the gentle balance between contentment and alertness. And dopamine, the glimmer of motivation, flickers on in the background, waiting for a reason to shine. Sometimes it takes a warm cup or a ray of light through the blinds. Sometimes it arrives unprompted, like a small internal smile. Waking is not a moment. It is a slow blooming dot, and yet something about it feels abrupt. You may open your eyes and feel confused. Where was I just now? Who was I in that dream? The logic of waking has no patience for the poetry of sleep. But the two are not enemies, they are dancers, passing the rhythm from one hand to another. You might feel disoriented. This is normal. The boundary between nightmind and daymond is not clean, where you are both yourself and someone softer. Don't rush through it. That fog is sacred. It is where intuition still lingers, where ideas are unshaped and fresh. This is why some of your most honest thoughts arrive in the first minutes of waking. With the ego still sleep-stunned, there is more room for truth. You might recall a detail from yesterday that suddenly feels important. You might see a problem in a new light. You might remember something that felt lost. Creativity lives here, too, in the spillover between sleep and wake, the hypnopompic state, a neurological doorway where the dreaming brain still echoes. Some of the greatest insights in art, science, philosophy have been born here in this margin. And then, slowly, the day enters. You sit up, the spine aligns, the muscles contract, the room becomes visible again. Sounds sharpen. You reach gravity not just physically, but mentally. You become a name again, a task list, a person with a schedule, but you are changed. The mind that wakes is not the same as the mind that drifted off. You've been rinsed in delta waves, bathed in REM. Your memories have been filed, your emotions softened, your perceptions retuned. The you that wakes is a quieter version, at least for a moment. And even if you feel tired, even if sleep was restless or short, your brain has still been working for you. Every cycle of sleep, even incomplete, has done some tidying. You are not beginning at zero. You are always beginning from the center of something ongoing. You carry night with you into the day, even if you don't know it. You carry the silence of sleep, the fragments of dreams, the softened judgments, the freshly sorted thoughts. All of this rides beneath your awareness, like roots beneath a field. That's the secret of waking. It isn't a beginning. It's a continuation, just on a different wavelength. As you breathe into the morning, notice what remains. Not every dream is meant to be remembered. Some are only meant to shift the soil of your being so that something new might grow. And what of the dreams that do remain? What do they want from you, these whispers from the sleeping brain? What are they still trying to say, even now, as daylight settles in? While your body lies still beneath covers, your brain is quietly at work sorting, pruning, reshaping. This is not rest in the way you might think. This is the deep work of remembering and forgetting. This is memories hidden. Labor. You might imagine memory as a bookshelf, orderly, reliable, with neat folders of the past waiting to be pulled down. But your brain does not archive. It edits each night while you sleep. Your mind sifts through the textures of the dathasites, the words, the feelings, and like a gentle editor with a red pen, it highlights some moments and crosses through others. It reorganizes scenes. Sometimes it even rewrites them. This is called memory consolidation, and it happens in waves in the early stages of sleep, particularly during slow-wave sleep though, kind with long, deep brain waves. Your hippocampus and neocortex engage in a quiet conversation. The hippocampus, which holds short-term memories like a sketchpad, begins to whisper its contents to the cortex, where long-term memories are woven more permanently. You don't notice this transfer, but it is happening. Your brain replays patterns, firing sequences of neurons that mirror what happened while you were awake, like a rehearsal. The conversation repeats, and with each repetition, the memory grows roots. Not all experiences make the cut. Many minor moments, the tone of someone's voice, the color of the floor tiles, the exact order of your emails, fade away. They were never meant to stay. The brain is wise in this way. It forgets on purpose. Forgetting is not failure, it's refinement. Your brain needs to forget to make space, just as a garden must be pruned for light to reach the roots. So must your memory be trimmed to nourish the parts that matter. Without forgetting, you'd drown in details. Emotional moments are more likely to be kept, not because they are louder, but because they are heavier. Emotion activates the amygdala, and the amygdala flags experiences as important. These memories glow brighter in the night's archive room. They are more likely to be saved, replayed, strengthened. But even they are changed. Sleep doesn't preserve memories like photographs, transforms them like dreams. The edges of memory blur. The emotions soften. Sometimes the meaning of a moment shifts entirely. You may wake with a new interpretation of something that once hurt. You may feel calmer about a conversation, or more certain about a decision. But with integration, and dreams, those strange symbolic visions, are part of this process too. REM sleep is particularly rich with memory processing. Here, the rules bend. The hippocampus, amygdala, and visual cortex light up. The prefrontal cortex, the logical voice, quiets down. This lets your memories mingle freely. A face from childhood might appear beside a hallway from yesterday. A fear, a hope, a forgotten desire, they might swirl into one fluid image. Why? Because dreams are your brain's way of creatively filing the day, not just storing what happened, but testing it against what has come before, linking past to present, weaving new understanding from old threads. And then there's memory. Reconsolidation, an idea that reshapes how we understand the mind. Each time you recall a memory, you don't simply replay it to reconstruct it. Like a potter reshaping clay, you adjust it, however slightly. And when you sleep again, the memory settles in its new shape. This means that who you are is always changing, gently. Night after night, you are not a fixed story. You are a living narrative, being quietly rewritten. Sleep allows your identity to evolve without effort. Memories become more than data, they become meaning. And sometimes, meaning comes not through words, but through feeling. You may not remember what you dreamed, but you wake up changed by it. That change might be emotional, perceptual, intuitive. Perhaps you find yourself reacting differently. You feel less reactive to an old hurt. You recall a forgotten ambition and feel a flicker of energy return. These are signs that your inner editor has done its work. Sometimes, memory reshapes in service of survival. Your brain lets go of what you can't use. It files lessons from mistakes, keeps warnings from danger, and stores patterns that may guide you tomorrow. But it also leaves space for wonder. It lets fragments drift like feathers so that imagination can catch them later, so that inspiration can rise from the soil of sleep. This is how you grow without noticing. This is how change happens, not just through doing, but through being, through resting. And as your brain organizes the architecture of memory, it also reshapes your sense of self. Memory is not just about the past. It is the way you know who you are. And so, sleep is the quiet hand that reintroduces you to yourself. You wake slightly altered. The memory of a conflict feels less sharp. The memory of a joy feels closer to the skin. Your past has shifted just enough to carry you more gently into the future. And all this happened without your permission, without your awareness, only through your willingness to sleep, to let go. Each night you offer yourself to the dark, and each morning you return with a mind that's a little lighter, a little more precise, a little more free. What then is real? If memory changes, if emotion softens, if the past rewrites itself in dreams, what is the truest version of your story? And what might your dreaming mind still be trying to show you? When the world quiets and your breath slows into rhythm, something remarkable begins. Inside you, a tide rises not in your chest or belly, but within your brain. It comes without sound, without splash, yet it flows as faithfully as the sea. This is the glymphatic system, a delicate cleansing stream reserved for the sleeping. By day, your brain is busy, alert, focused, electric, with thoughts and perceptions. Billions of neurons fire and communicate, generating waste byproducts with every signal exchanged. Just like a bustling city, the brain produces debris, used up proteins, stray molecules, fragments from the day's neural activity. And just like a city, it needs a way to clear the clutter. But your brain does not have its own immune cleanup crew like other parts of the body. Instead, it waits for night. Only in sleep do the conditions become just right. Cerebrospinal fluid cool and ancient begins to flow more freely through channels around your brain cells. It pulses in time with your heartbeat, moving with a rhythm tuned by rest. As your consciousness dims, your brain cells actually shrink just slightly, but enough to widen the spaces between them. This creates a temporary highway through which waste can exit and renewal can begin. It's a hidden rinsing, silent and essential. Scientists call this process glymphatic flow. Glim for the glial cells that guide it, phatic for its similarity to the lymphatic system in the body. But this is something altogether more intimate. This is a lullaby for your neurons, and what it clears is vital. One of the key molecules it washes away is beta amyloid, a sticky protein fragment that, when left to accumulate, forms the plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease. It also removes tau proteins, metabolic leftovers, and other molecular debris. In wakefulness, these substances build up slowly and imperceptibly, but in sleep, particularly deep, non-REM sleep, they are swept away, molecule by molecule, in a gentle current. It is one of the reasons why good sleep protects cognition over time. Why rest doesn't just feel good, keeps your brain whole. You don't notice it happening. But if you've ever woken up after deep, dreamless sleep, feeling clearer, more yourself, more present, that is its trace. Your brain has been quietly washed, each cell a little brighter. You might imagine it as a tide pulling across the shore of your mind, drawing away the silt and sediment left by thinking, remembering, reacting, leaving behind space, freshness, clarity. And all this happens without conscious effort. You don't command it. You surrender to it by closing your eyes, by drifting inward, by letting go. The glymphatic system is most active during slow-wave sleep, the deep state that occurs early in the night. Here, your heart rate drops, your breathing slows, and your body temperature gently falls. Your brain hums at a lower frequency delta, waves rolling like low thunder. This stillness is not emptiness, it is maintenance. It is care, happening in silence, like custodians that only come out at night. Glial cells, particularly astrocytes, guide the flow of fluid, ensuring that the rinse reaches even the most remote corners of your cortex. They move alongside the vessels, directing the tide. They do this without praise, without awareness. They are the quiet stewards of your mind. If sleep is disrupted, cut short, fragmented, delayed, this system suffers. The waste builds, and over time, this buildup may affect how clearly you think, how well you remember, how deeply you feel. This is why sleep deprivation often leads to mental fog, not just tiredness, but cloudiness. The brain hasn't been cleaned. The internal mirrors haven't been polished. You carry yesterday's clutter into today. But when you sleep well, when you dip into the deepest currents of your thoughts, the next morning seem to float more freely. Connections come more easily. Memories settle into their places. You are, quite literally, more clear-headed. There's a quiet wisdom in this system, an evolutionary rhythm we've only just begun to understand. Until recently, the glymphatic system was unknown to science. It was discovered in mice in 2012. Before that, we didn't know how the brain cleaned itself. Now we do, and it changes how we see the night. Sleep is not idleness. It is a sacred choreography. It is the moment your brain bathes itself in moonlight. You can think of it like a temple keeper, sweeping the floor in darkness. Not seen, not heard, but essential. Every night, without applause, your brain cares for itself in this way. Even dreams may serve this larger work. Some researchers believe that REM sleep helps with emotional processing and neural integration, while sleep handles the physical cleansing. Together, they are the custodians of your wholeness. And so, as you drift, your brain rebuilds. Not just emotionally, not just imaginatively, but biologically. One rinse, one wave at a time. This gentle tide may even be influenced by your position. Some studies suggest that sleeping on your side, particularly your right side, can help the glymphatic system flow more efficiently. Perhaps it is nature's nudge, written into instinct, that curling up in comfort also supports the deepest healing, and in this, there's something both intimate and cosmic. Your body, made of stardust, follows a rhythm of tides, just like the moon pulls at the ocean. You, too, are water and motion. You, too, need ebb and release. So tonight, when you lie down, remember this: as your mind slows, as dreams begin. A tide will rise behind your eyes, and it will carry away the remnants of the day, the traces of your thinking, the quiet weight of being awake. You don't need to understand it for it to work. You just need to trust the dark, to give your brain the night it needs to begin again. And maybe, just maybe, in this gentle rinse, some part of you is preparing not only to wake, but to remember what clarity really feels like. You are still. Your breath rises and falls like a slow tide. Your limbs rest heavy, surrendered to the quiet of night. And yet, deep inside your skull, there is motion, soft, unseen, transformative. Your brain is not asleep in the way you might imagine. It is not shut off, not frozen. Instead, it is rewiring itself, like a garden quietly growing beneath moonlight. This is a beautiful word for a beautiful truth. Your brain is not fixed. It is shaped daily, hourly, even now, by your experience, your thoughts, your feelings. While you sleep, the sculpting continues. Neurons whisper across synapses, forming new pathways from the day's impressions. Some connections strengthen, becoming highways for future thoughts. Others weaken, gently trimmed away, no longer needed, like a gardener pruning with care. Your brain refines what it grows. This happens not with urgency, but with rhythm, a natural cycle tied to your stages of sleep. During slow-wave sleep, when your mind is quietest and your body is most at rest, consolidation begins. What you learned today is sifted. Not all is kept. Not all is lost. There is wisdom in what remains. Learning, you see, doesn't end when the lesson stops. It deepens in the dark. If you tried something new today, a skill, a language, a thought, your brain is tending to it now. The fragile circuit is being rehearsed in silence, reinforced, stabilized. This is why sleep is essential, not just for memory, but for mastery. A musician improves in their dreams. A dancer's steps grow steadier by morning. Even insight, the kind that feels sudden and bright, is often born from this slow, unseen process. You may not feel it, but you are becoming, each night, a little more, and in the strange terrain of REM sleep, where dreams bloom, vivid and strange, other kinds of change unfold. Here, your brain replays experience, not as fact, but as feeling. Emotions are sorted, patterns are tested. Old ideas mingle with new ones, giving birth to innovation. Creativity, too, has roots in sleep. Studies show that problems left unsolved at bedtime sometimes awaken with solutions. This is not magic. This is neuroplasticity, working quietly in the dark, connecting distant thoughts, weaving the disjointed into something whole. It is here, in the hush of sleep, that your brain becomes flexible, not chaotic, not random, just free. Freer than it is by day, when habit and logic keep it tethered. And this freedom matters. It lets you evolve, not just as a thinker, but as a person. If something difficult happened today, a sorrow, a mistake, a fear, your brain holds it gently tonight. It doesn't erase it, but it softens its edges. It looks for meaning, for integration, for a way to place it in the story of you. Neuroplasticity is not only about learning facts or mastering skills, it's also about emotional healing, the letting go of old reactions, the building of new responses. You are, in essence, always under construction. And sleep gives the builders their quiet time to work. Imagine your brain as a forest by night, the trails are tended. Some are widened, others allowed to grow over. New paths may begin as faint impressions, leading somewhere uncertain, until one morning you find yourself thinking a new thought, and it feels as natural as walking. This is change without pressure. They grow while they slumber, not just in height, but in spirit. And even as an adult, you are never finished growing. Your mind is not a statue. You're not just resting. You're trusting. Trusting that your brain knows what to keep, what to let go, what to become. Even the dreams that seem strange or nonsensical may be your mind exploring a new idea, one not yet ready for daylight. And if you feel different in the morning, if you wake with a calmer heart, a fresher thought, a softened memory, know that this, too, is the work of night. You are not the same as you were yesterday. And that is not a flaw. It is a feature. Your brain's flexibility is its strength. Let the circuits shift and settle with care, because even in stillness, you are changing, because in the quiet, you are becoming. And as the night carries you deeper, the house is quiet now. Outside, the world has folded in on itself. No notifications, no calls, no footsteps in the hall. Just the hush of night and the rhythm of your breathing. But inside you, a softer kind of noise. The social mind never quite sleeps. You find yourself revisiting a moment from earlier. A look that lingered too long. A phrase you wish you had worded differently. An imagined conversation you never had but might. This quiet mental theater plays on its own stage. Faces return, smiles loop, voices echo through memory. Not because you are obsessed, but because you are human. Your brain is a social organ. It evolved not in isolation, but in circles of firelight, in glances and gestures, in shared meals and shared silence. And even when alone, it continues its task, interpreting, forecasting, connecting dots. This is the work of the default mode network, a network in your brain that activates during rest, introspection, and self-reflection. It lights up when you daydream, when you wonder what someone meant, when you construct invisible dialogues in the dark. Neuroscientists call it social simulation, but you know it as replay, regret, longing, hope, connection, imagined and reimagined. At night, there is space for these simulations to breathe. There's less input, less external demand. So your brain drifts inward, not to be dramatic, but why their tone shifted at the end of a sentence. What you might say if you had the chance. Again, this isn't pointless, it's practice, emotional rehearsal, the mind's quiet effort to understand others and yourself more deeply. You may find yourself aching a little in the stillness. That ache has a name: social hunger. Not quite loneliness, not sadness either, but the subtle hum of a brain that craves resonance. We are wired to belong. Even in solitude, we seek invisible company. That is not weakness, it is legacy. Your ancestors survived because they were attuned to others. Two faces in the dark, two tones in the wind, two the meanings between words. The brain carries that sensitivity into modern nights, where the threats have faded, but the need remains. Oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, flows even in imagined closeness. When you remember someone's kindness or visualize holding a loved one, your body responds with warmth. Your nervous system softens, your breathing slows. You feel it now, perhaps, that slight comfort as you picture a familiar smile, as if some part of you knows you are not entirely alone. Mirror neurons, those delicate mimics in your mind, fire when you imagine another person's expression. They allow you to feel with, even across distance, even in memory, even in the dark. Your brain does not differentiate sharply between real and remembered presence. And so, night becomes a place of reunion, not just with others, but with yourself as shaped by others. Every bond you've ever had, every tension, every tenderness has sculpted you in some way. The tone of your inner voice, the way you reach out or hold back, the way you feel when you close your eyes. The night invites these old lessons forward, sometimes with comfort, sometimes with pain, sometimes with a quiet mix of both. Find yourself remembering a laugh that no longer echoes in your life, or reliving a moment of misunderstanding that still flickers unresolved. This is not your mind being cruel. It is your mind seeking resolution, order, peace, and in doing so, it grows. The social brain is malleable. It learns from its own stories, from imagining better outcomes, from recognizing patterns, and gently deciding next time, I will listen more. Next time, I will protect my heart. Next time, I will speak with softness. This is how we repair, in thought before action, in silence before sound, and even the ache of longing, the small emptiness that comes from wanting closeness, is part of the brain's call to remain open. It is a sign that your capacity for connection is still alive, that you are still ready to be seen. In some moments, the absence feels louder than presence, but there is meaning in that echo, too. It reminds you that your inner world is full, that it continues to hold others, not as shadows, but as seeds. Some will grow again, some will fade, but tonight they drift beside you like stars in an unseen constellation. Your social brain, with all its replays and regrets and wishes, is not trying to disturb your rest. It is trying to make meaning, to rehearse compassion, to preserve what matters and release what. So if your mind feels crowded in the quiet, know this is part of its gentle healing. You are not broken for revisiting old moments. You are not weak for wanting warmth. You are simply human, wired for closeness, even when none is near. Let that knowing be enough. Let your inner conversations quiet to whispers. Let your imagined dialogues dissolve into stillness. And as you soften toward sleep, as your social brain dims its lantern for the night, you may wonder, in the absence of others, what kind of inner companionship might gently rise to meet you. You are lying still. The night hums around you, low and slow. Is not sleep, not yet. And it is not alertness, not quite. The sharp corners of identity, the daily you, begin to soften. Time no longer moves in straight lines. Memories arrive like whispers. Emotions drift without name or urgency. And here comes the question, not shouted, but felt. What is this awareness that watches? It is a flicker, a breath, a fluid presence. Science calls it consciousness. But even science agrees. No one fully knows what that word contains. Your waking self is a conductor, orchestrating sensations, decisions, language, memory. Then remains on stage. In this dusky realm, consciousness becomes unmoored. It doesn't shut down, it changes tempo. Your thalamus, once a gatekeeper of sensory input, lowers the drawbridge. each one casting a soft circle of light. Some are echoes of the day, some are fragments of dream already beginning, some seem to come from nowhere, abstract, unclaimed. This is the mystery, so immaterial, a self, a witness, a shimmer of I. Neuroscientists map activity. They name regions, the default mode network, the posterior hot zone, the global neuronal workspace. But none of those names capture the feeling of right now, of drifting gently inward and wondering who is doing the drifting. You notice, perhaps, that thoughts are no longer forming in words, or the faint hum of meaning with no sentence attached. This is hypnagogia, the threshold between waking and sleep, a natural portal your mind passes through each night. In this place, your brain begins its descent. Alpha waves give way to theta. The analytical quiets and the symbolic takes hold. Images emerge, not quite dreams, but the early sketches of them. A doorway, a face, a landscape never seen before, yet known. You don't direct these visions. They arise as if consciousness is tuning to another channel, and still you remain aware, though that awareness is feathered now, not solid. It dances in and out, flickering like candlelight in a shifting breeze. Consciousness is often described as a flame, but it is not constant. It changes hue, it flickers, it leans into the wind of sleep and back again into waking. Even under anesthesia, even in deep sleep, some part of your mind remains waiting, watching, faint as a distant bell. So where does the self go when it slips? Where are you when sleep claims the body but the mind lingers? It is not a riddle, it is a return to something more ancient than logic, more spacious than thought. During this in-between state, your sense of ego, of me and mine, begins to soften. This isn't a loss. It's a kind of expansion. The borders of identity loosen, allowing the world in. You may feel, briefly, like a ripple in a wider sea, and that sensation, gentle and strange, is not delusion. It is part of how the brain naturally unwinds itself before rest. It is why monks speak of stillness, why poets linger on dusk, why the veil between self and cosmos feels thinnest when the world is quietest. There is a concept in cognitive science called meta-awareness, being aware of being aware. You hover here now in that loop, knowing that you are conscious of drifting toward unconsciousness, and still the body breathes, still the brain signals, still the mind watches. No switch is flipped. You do not suddenly fall, you float. This in-between space is fertile, creative. The mind weaves strange connections here, between memory and invention, between symbol and meaning, between what was and what could be. Some of your most insightful ideas may emerge not in full wakefulness, but in this liminal place, where the grip of logic is light and imagination begins to stretch. Salvador Dali held a key in his hand as he fell asleep, so that the sound of it dropping would wake him at the edge of dream. Thomas Edison did the same, as if they knew. The borderlands of sleep are where the mysteries wait. You visit this place each night, and each night you return changed in some small, invisible way. Because in the quiet unwinding, your brain is not just resting, it is rediscovering itself. Your consciousness, so reliable in daylight, is more like a tide than a tower. It rises and recedes, it shifts, and as you settle deeper into the dark, you realize this flickering sense of self is not a flaw, it is a gift, a living question, a dance that makes space for dreams to begin. You are not the same you at every hour, and this version, the dusk self, the fluid witness, the silent voyager, is no less true than the thinker of day. So breathe gently, let the boundaries blur, let the thinker dissolve into the dreamer, and as the light within you dims into something soft and star-like, a final wonder flickers at the edge of sleep. If consciousness is a dance, who or what is listening to the music?